Hello everyone, Namaste, and welcome to our Success and Happiness Question and Answer webinar. My name is Dharma Devi. I'm very happy to be with you tonight or today, wherever you might be in the world. For those joining me live, thank you first off, and feel free to chat with me, send in your questions throughout the broadcast. We're going to start with a little bit of a meditation so we can get centered and grounded and fully present for this webinar today. So what I'd like to do is invite you to chant with me. We'll have a very simple chant. The words are just joy, 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 ever new joy. So feel free to chant with me. We'll then have a meditation, especially as we start off, to let people arrive. Sometimes we have latecomers. So let's use this time wisely and really get grounded and centered in this aspect of success and happiness. So let's go ahead and start off with our chant. And as I said, please do chant with me. Feel the devotion in your heart. Feel that openness in the heart and allowing the intuition to come, allowing true success and happiness to come. And in this way, we'll be better channels in the world for that success and happiness. Feel free to close your eyes and go deep within. Joy, 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 ever new joy, 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 ever new You can continue repeating this chant. I'm just going to adjust the camera here. Feel free to keep your eyes closed. Keep your gaze uplifted to the point between the eyebrows. Mentally offering that prayer of devotion up to the divine. Just that simple prayer, joy, 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 ever new joy. Feel yourself as that joy, that bliss, that true, perfect expression of who you really are. As I mentioned, keep your gaze uplifted to the point between the eyebrows, the spiritual eye. Feel that you're broadcasting from that center, that expansive feeling, that soul call to the divine, and try to feel in the heart for the response. Try to feel for that reciprocated love that just goes beyond our imagination. I believe Yogananda said, pray until your heart is bursting with joy. So let's just meditate in silence for just a few moments together. Call on the divine in the words of your own heart. And now let's further invoke the presence of the masters, the angels, saints of all religions. Or just calling on our higher self. Let's do that together by chanting Om just one time. Feel that you're inviting the presence of the Great Ones to be with you right in this very moment, to guide you, to bless you, to bring you to your next step in life, bring you to your Dharma, your purpose. Inhaling. Om Shanti Shanti. Amen. So again, welcome for any who have just arrived recently. And I just want to check with everybody who's viewing online live right now and make sure that you can see me and hear me. Hopefully you were able to during the meditation, but just in case, if you know how to and are an adept Ustream user, you can enter that in. Thank you very much, Davina. Okay, so tonight or today is a Q&A webinar. So really, I'm leaving it, excuse me, I'm just grabbing my tea, leaving it in all of your hands as to how the flow goes. But I do have a story I wanted to share with you, hopefully to inspire some activity on our question and answer series. Thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed the harmonium playing. It's a real tool, the harmonium, and really chanting in general. Yogananda said that chanting is half the battle, and he's talking about half the battle on the spiritual path, which is saying a lot. I mean, really, when we chant, even when we sing devotional chants or songs, we're bypassing the intellect, which is not always an easy thing to do. So when we do that, we're infusing our consciousness with that quality that we're chanting about or singing about. So, for example, Yogananda, he said that he spiritualized every one of his chants, and what he meant by that was that he went into a state of ecstasy, of samadhi, of oneness with the divine as he was chanting these, and he felt that connection with Divine Mother and felt that blessing flowing through the chant. So every time we chant, or even if we're just chanting along with others, we're drawing on that essence of those chants, which is really an amazing and beautiful and powerful thing. So I wanted to tell this fun story that Yogananda tells, and feel free to, hopefully during this time that I'm telling the story, you'll think of some questions, and feel free to type those in, and we can get things going. So this is a fun story. Also has a very good moral to it, and it's especially fun to listen to Yogananda tell this story. It's on, I wish I could remember the name of the CD, but he has a lot of CDs of his actual voice that are put out by Self-Realization Fellowship, so you can go on their website and see all those talks that are offered by them. And so this story is of a great yogi who was obviously very close to God, because he talked to God and on a regular basis. And when he left his body, he got to heaven and said, you know, I know that I had this great contact with you during my life, Lord, but you know, I was so poor during that life that I starved to death, and you know, that wasn't all that fun. So when I come back, I'd like to come back and be a great yogi, be very devotional to you, and I'd like to have a lot of money. I'd like to be very wealthy. So God says, okay, we can do that. So he sends him back, and he's a great yogi. He's very wealthy. He has a great position in life, and he ends up, you know, he goes through his life, and he realizes that he's not healthy, and all the money that he's got, he spends on, you know, all these different procedures and things, and nothing makes him healthy. So he dies of some disease, and you know, there he is again with God, and he says, Lord, you know, that was a little bit better there, but let's try this again. So the Lord says, okay, what would you like this time? And the yogi says, I'd like to be a great yogi, I'd like to be very wealthy, and I want to be very healthy. And so the Lord says, okay, great, you got it this time. So he sends him back, and so the yogi is there, great yogi, very wealthy, very healthy, lives a very long life, and he dies, unfortunately, very lonely. He just dies of loneliness. He has no one in his life to share all this wealth and health with. So there he is again with God and says, Lord, I just haven't gotten this quite right yet. So what I need this time, I want to be a great yogi, I want to be very healthy, very wealthy, and I want to have a wife to share it with. So the Lord said, okay, are you sure about this? And he said, yes, I'm sure. So he goes back again. This time, great yogi, very healthy, very wealthy, and he has a wife that is a terrible, terrible nag, and nags him day and night. And the yogi, and as Yogananda says, is very funny, says, and he died of super nagging. So, and then there he is with God again. He says, Lord, okay, now I've got it. So I want to be very great yogi. Never loses the great yogi. Great yogi, very healthy, very wealthy. And this time I want a good wife, a very good wife. No nagging. So the Lord says, okay, we got it this time. So you're getting the gist of this story. He comes back. He has very good yogi abilities, very devotional. He is very healthy, very wealthy, and this time he has a great wife, such a good wife, and she's beautiful and very sweet to him. But unfortunately, she dies at a very young age. And the yogi said, this won't do. So he says to the Lord, very healthy, very wealthy, great wife who lives a long time, and a great yogi. So he comes back. The Lord says, are you sure you've got it this time? Are you sure you covered everything? And he says, I'm positive. So he said, okay. So the yogi comes back. Great yogi, good health, good wealth. He has a great wife who lives a long time. And unfortunately, she lives too long. And she gets old. And she doesn't quite look as beautiful anymore. And the man, the great yogi that he is, his eyes start to wander. And he takes a liking to his young, beautiful secretary. But unfortunately, the young secretary is only after his money. And so he leaves his wife only to be taken for a ride by this young beauty who takes all of his money. And there he is with no wife, no money. And he just says, okay, gosh, he's just left it, and he says, what do I do now? And the Lord comes to him and says, what's the problem? I just thought I gave you everything that you asked for. And he said, no, this just wasn't right. And the Lord says, okay, well, what would you like in the next life? And the yogi finally, he catches on and he says, no, I know your tricks. I see what's been going on. And everything that I asked for has a catch. And so now I know. All I want, Lord, is you. All I want is you. Nothing else. And so I know that was a little bit of a long story, but really drives home the point that we tend to go at success and happiness from the bottom up. We say, okay, if I have this car, or if I have this partner, if I have this job, then I'll be happy. Instead of coming at it from the top down, what will really give us true happiness? The knowledge, the acceptance of our highest nature, of our soul, of the love for God, the love for the divine. And as really the true moral of this story is, seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all these things shall be added unto thee. And so that's really what this course, what this webinar, what the Akash course that Swami Kriyananda taught is all about. And since I didn't mention in this webinar so far, this is meant to be something of an introduction to the Akash series, which is Ancient Keys to Attaining Success and Happiness. And it's a 6-week course that Swami Kriyananda, who was a direct and close direct disciple of Paramahansa Yogananda, in case any of you are familiar with the book Autobiography of a Yogi. If not, then I highly recommend it. It's free online. If you have a Kindle, you can download it for free. Just a very powerful book, life-changing for millions of people, really. So, I don't see any questions. What's going on here, guys? Hi, Omkar. Welcome. Nice to have you with us. So, I told my story, and does anybody... Let's just see what we were talking about discussing in the first place. Let's see. Okay. Do you have a question about how to achieve success and happiness while adhering to right action? So, do you? No, I'm just kidding. Is financial security eluding you and you don't know why? Do you want to do more to serve others and the world, yet not waste time and energy? Let's talk about that for a little bit, because it's a very wonderful sentiment to want to do more for the world. Hold on, I'm just getting my chat window popped up here. But it can seem like a hard battle to win. I mean, there's so much chaos, so much disharmony in our world that, we can join causes and sign petitions and fundraise and all this stuff for different good causes. But, is it a waste of energy? Well, I don't think it's a waste of energy, but what really makes the most change in the world is our own vibration. And as the Buddha says, that the change that we see in the world is the change within us. I'm paraphrasing. But when we start to view the world differently because of the harmony within ourselves, that's when we can really affect positive changes, really make an impact on the world through our vibration. And really, even just us gathered here today for this webinar, we're impacting each other. So are we making a positive impact or a negative impact? Hopefully a positive one, because we're all interested in how to become more successful, more happy, and probably drawn for the deeper purpose of satsang, of spiritual fellowship. And like attracts like. So we draw those people to us that are vibrating, you could say, at a similar frequency. So when you find people in your life who seem to no longer quite fit, this it's sort of a transitional period, and it's not to say that we have to cut off people in our lives that no longer quite jive with us, but sometimes we do need some space in those relationships. We need to really get strong in ourselves, in our own vibration, and relationships can be uplifting, and also they can pull us down. So we want to try our best to surround ourselves with people who are going to lift us up rather than pull us down. And you can imagine, how do we attract success in our lives? Well, the same way, in that same way, the company that we keep, the environment that we keep is incredibly important, more important than we can really imagine. Yogananda said that environment is stronger than willpower. So if you want to be successful, mix with other people who are successful, who have, you can imagine it as success karma. They just seem to, whatever they get involved with, they attract success. And in, what I mean in the deeper sense of success, not necessarily that they make a lot of money, but that they're happy inside, that they seem to be truly happy. So not necessarily a person that is just the typical type A person that's just running around like a chicken with their head cut off and never has any time for family, never has any time for anybody, for friends. And, it's just like work, work, work. That's not what I mean by success. I mean a person who feels to you to be truly integrated in their life, to be a person of integrity. And that's the real success that we want, is a balanced success that really fills all aspects of life. So successful maybe in their marriage, successful in a certain profession even that you're wanting to move forward in. So if you're an artist, you would want to mix with other successful artists. And what you do is you pick up on those success vibrations, and it helps to get things moving within you in the right direction. You can imagine not getting caught up in all the dramas of that profession. So think about an artist who is really stuck in financial difficulties, and I tried to get my art in a gallery and they wouldn't take it, and I got to start over, and it really pulls on your consciousness. And so try your best. It's not to say be cold or be aloof to the suffering of others, of course not, but it's to say that mix as much as possible with people of success and happiness, good karma. I wanted to talk a little bit about the ego. And Swami Kriyananda says the most important thing on the spiritual path is transcending the ego. And how do we transcend the ego? Very important question, and it's going to be unique to all of us in a lot of ways. And we can always complicate things and make it more difficult than it really is. But a good practice for transcending the ego, and let me start off by saying what I mean by the ego. Yogananda defined the ego as the soul identified with the body. So the ego likes to separate. It likes to limit, confine, kind of box us in. This is who I am. I'm this body. I'm nothing else. I'm not a child of God. I'm not one with everything, etc., etc. I'm a woman. I like chocolate. I don't like that person sitting next to me. All the things that confine us to being an ego, being identified with the body. And but it is part of the soul. We have to remember that. That's why we don't say we want to destroy the ego. We want to transcend the ego. We want the ego in the Mahabharata, great Indian scripture. The ego can't be killed. That's its power, is that it, there it is, riddled with arrows, in this epic battle, epic story. And it never dies. The only time that it finally dies is when it offers itself. It has to say, okay, I'm ready to go. And so that's what I mean by transcending the ego. It's not suppression. It's not anything negative. It's to say, I offer up my little self into this greater self. And what's beautiful is that when we transcend the ego, when we really realize our oneness with the divine, with God, we never lose who we are. We never lose anything. We don't even lose our ego. We still maintain that memory of who we are, who we've been. If you are a believer in reincarnation, all those lifetimes of who we've been, what we've done. And so nothing is lost in this journey of self-realization. It's just that everything is gained. So some practical tips on how to transcend the ego, that was where I was getting to, was a very good practice, and we talk about this a lot in the Akash series, is to expand our reality. So the ego says, just me, what's in it for me, etc. You get the point. But the soul says, let me share, let me be open, let me connect with others, let me connect with the world, with everything. If the nature of bliss, Swami Kriyananda says, is to expand itself. So when we feel that sense of joy, we had that chant at the beginning, joy, 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 ever new joy. And so when we're in that state of feeling joy within us, because it is within us, it's not anywhere outside of us. Nothing outside of us is going to bring us true joy. It's all going within and finding the joy within, and then expanding that sense of joy. So the nature of joy is to expand itself. So when we're feeling that expansive joy, it just naturally goes out, and in a good way. A lot of times our energy can go outward in an emotional, reactive kind of way. That's not what I mean by the energy, the joy expanding itself. It's that bliss wants to share itself with everything, with everyone. So the more we're tuning into that, the more we're able to connect with people in our relationships, with our co-workers, with every situation in life from an expanded state of awareness. So we're really connecting on the deepest sort of level, rather than on a very limited like and dislike kind of mentality. Well, I'll like you if you act this way. Very conditional kind of love. We want to tap into really an unconditional love in our interactions with everyone. And the reason that we're doing this, it's not like I should do this because it's the right thing to do, and maybe the 10 Commandments say I should do it or whatever, or my mom says I should do it, whatever. It's that those principles are going to help us to be happy. Those principles are going to draw success and love, and unconditional love in particular, into our lives. So, in a way you can think it's a selfish sort of thing, because it is, because really, we're doing it to become free. We're doing it to draw to ourselves the kind of love that we're giving out. But when we do it, ultimately we want to offer love and kindness and harmony to others without any expectation for what we will receive back. It's called nishkam karma, action without desire for the fruits of our action. So karma being action. So if we can tap into that more and more, just coming from a place of integration. Again, I keep going back to that word, but it's an important word. And think about what that word really means. That's one of the lessons in Akash, is on honesty, truthfulness, and integrity. And it's being really, in its truest nature, it's being a whole person, being a true human, and to be able to act from our center at all times. Yogananda said, stand unshaken amidst the crash of breaking worlds. So if we can do that, we're really making some great spiritual progress. So let's see if there's any questions. Yes, Brockton, I'm not sure if your first name is Brockton or first name is James, but said, sometimes we have to be gentle and compassionate with others who try to pull us down. And that's a very good point. Always coming from a place of kindness within us, because, getting down on others, it does no good for the person or for us. Because if you think back in your life of times that maybe somebody has come to you and said, you need to act this way, that you're acting such and such, and I don't like it, so you need to change. I mean, how often do we change because someone else tells us to? We really never do. The change has to come from within, and that's the same for everybody. It can be easy to say, okay, well, but I know better. I know what you should do in order to be happy. Because we get these glimpses, especially as we're progressing on the spiritual path, we get these insights of how to really tap into success and to happiness. And we see people all around us suffering, and it's really hard. So really the best thing that we do is, again, to change our own vibration, to do whatever practices it is. If you have a path, if you have a practice of meditation or of prayer or whatever you might call it, but some period where you go inward, you go inside, and you hopefully have a period of silence. Because, like meditation, for example, is listening. It's a dynamic form of listening to the divine, to our own higher self. And it's how we tap into intuition. It's how we tap into true guidance. Prayer, in most cases, I won't say in all cases, but prayer can be a talking to God. We're saying, God, I need such and such, and I need such and such, and won't you help me get this car, and won't you help me get this love in my life, and I'm so ready to share with somebody, and I don't know why you're not listening to me, and I keep asking you for these things and nothing's coming, and we don't take a second to just listen, to just go inside and say, what would you have me do? What's your will for me? And so okay, thank you, Brockton. So we just need to have that time of inwardness, of listening for the response of the divine, listening for that usually very, very quiet whisper within us, that we've probably all experienced, when maybe we were going in a certain direction and maybe we got a little feeling inside that said, oh, maybe you shouldn't. For example, my friend recently was out backpacking, and he came across a mountain with his brother. And this is up in Northern California, where there's lots of mountains. I'm in Los Angeles, so not a whole lot of mountains. So there he was, and they're looking at this cliff face, and they know the mountain, they know the area, and they said, okay, well, one side we know there's just like a little steep part for like 100 feet, and then it levels out, and it's just a nice climb up. And something within them said, don't do it, and they said, well, we'll just go a little ways and see what, then we can reevaluate. So they went up a little bit, got to a little cliff face, and still felt this weird feeling inside, like this is not the right thing to do. And they were both feeling it. And for whatever reason, maybe it's just that we're not used to listening to that voice, and we say, well, that could be, I see the question, with all the different voices of the ego, how can we tell which is intuition, which is the ego? And so we get mixed up, and we say, oh, well, maybe that's just some inward fear that I have, and I just need to conquer that fear and go for it. And so sure enough, they went for it, and it ended up being 1,000-foot climb up this almost sheer mountain face, extremely dangerous, and they were very scared for their lives the whole time. And luckily, knew enough to be praying, to be this constant repetition of mantras within japa, and so they made it fine. But we need to learn how to tune into the right voice, and it usually is the quietest voice within us that is our intuition, that is our soul telling us which way to go. And with the intuition, what we can do is we can practice. We can build the intuition like a muscle. And we do that with little things. Should I get an ice cream cone? It can be trivial even. And should I go this way to get home? Should I take the freeway to get home? Or would there be less traffic if I went through the little side streets? Whatever it might be, try to tune in, even just for a split second. What we do to really tap into that quiet little whispering voice is to quiet the mind, because that's where the reason can really pull things apart and take us in all sorts of directions. The heart also, the center of feeling, the center of emotion if it's going outward or downward. So we want to still the heart, and we can do this very quickly if we have a practice when we're not in those situations. So we talk about going inward, having a meditation practice. That's when we really tune in to the heart. We tune into the spiritual eye here at the point between the eyebrows, and we learn to listen. So we learn to broadcast out, maybe whatever might be bothering us, whatever, we might be confused about, we can offer those up at the beginning or the end of our meditation, and then try to feel in the heart for the direction we should go in. And what we start to feel, what we start to tap into, is the energy of the heart. What's going on in the heart? If we feel a sense of expansion, a sense of peace, a sense of joy, of inner joy, that's when we know that, yeah, that's the way to go. That's the right direction. If we feel some uneasiness or contractiveness in the heart when we're offering up that prayer or that question, that's when we know that's not the right way to go. So that's how our intuition can speak to us, other than just actually like hearing something, which can be very rare sometimes. A lot of, maybe some people on the broadcast have had that experience, but it doesn't happen all the time. It's usually that the divine comes to us through our feeling faculties, and the feeling faculty is in the heart. So if we can settle the heart, which can be all tumultuous all the time, if we can still the heart, then we can really feel what's going on and how we're trying to be led in that way. Okay, so let's see. I feel stuck right now, both in my outer situation and in my spiritual motivation. I want to engage in deeper practice, but have become complacent and comfortable with where I'm at. That's a really good point. And you must not feel too comfortable because it's obviously, something that's weighing on your heart, and it's your soul saying we're not moving forward. We need to keep going. And I should mention that there's a lot of crazy energy in the world right now. There's a lot going on. There's especially for people who are empathic, who tune in easily, maybe sometimes too easily, to other people's realities. We can get kind of sucked in to other people's realities, and it can be not a good feeling. And so we need to be strong in ourselves. We need to be able to expand our sympathies to include others, but at the same time we need to have strong auras. We need to be really centered in ourselves and not get drawn out, because we can help a lot more when we have a lot of good energy within us. So wanting to engage in deeper practice, it's really a question of building more and more willpower, and the more energy we have, the more we can use it to increase our willpower, and to use that good discriminating faculty within us to say, okay, rather than sleeping in until noon, I'm going to get up. I'm going to get up early, maybe 30 minutes early, and have a longer meditation. And, Yogananda said to think of your spiritual practice as spiritual hygiene. Just like you wouldn't go out before maybe you brush your teeth or take a shower. Think of meditation as your spiritual hygiene. Don't go out before you have that time to go within, to touch the divine within you. And then, then when you come out, you'll be able to share so much more, and from such a deeper place. So, how do I become unstuck? It really is a question of getting the energy moving. You talked about feeling this complacency. Yogananda taught a series of exercises called the energization exercises. And, if you have your own practice, whatever, yoga postures can be a great thing to do, but something, even going out for a run, something that really gets the energy moving, and we don't have to worry so much about which direction the energy is moving until we actually have the energy. And then we get to direct the energy inward and upward. And, I know it can be very challenging on the physical plane at some points where we just feel like we don't have any energy and we just feel stuck and stagnant, but just do whatever you can to get energy flowing. Swami Kriyananda tells a story of when he was stuck in just an awful mood, and he said to his reasoning faculty, he said, "Boys, do we like this? Do we like feeling this way?" And his mental faculty said, "No, we don't like this." And so he said, "Well, let's do something about it," And so he just put his attention, put his focus very strongly at this point between the eyebrows. And he said in 5 minutes, the mood was gone, So really, it's a question of where our consciousness is at. The soul loves to meditate, Yogananda said. So it's our ego that is trying to pull us down into, oh, I don't have time, I really don't feel like it, So try to tune into the soul. The soul loves to meditate. And so give your soul that time to meditate. And, if you don't feel like meditating, don't make it a chore, especially in the beginning, or if you're restarting a practice. Just meditate for as long as you feel some sense of joy inside. Put your focus up here. There's a great website I'll send to you, and just to mention it, it's learn-meditation.org. So learn-meditation.org. And that has some really powerful techniques that Yogananda taught for just for free, of course. On you can learn the Hong Sa method for concentration. You can learn some techniques for drawing in more energy into the body. You can learn techniques for relaxing the body, relaxing the mind. All these things, will help to get out of whatever funk we're in. And if you have your own meditation practice, your own set of techniques, sometimes we get into such a routine with our spiritual practice that it gets a little dry, and maybe we need to spruce it up. Maybe we need to go back and read some things that we maybe let go of along the way, and that can re-inspire us along the way. So I hope that was helpful. And that was from Paradise Waits, which is very true. Okay, so let's see if we have any other questions. Lots of good stuff going on here. And so Devin is saying that he's feeling iffy about yoga teacher training that he's doing. It's a good thing, but for some reason it just doesn't feel right. So, that's important to listen to. If your intuition is saying maybe, you can start on a path, and it doesn't mean that it's going to stay the right path the whole time. Now, that's not to say that we want to keep starting projects and then not finishing them. It can be a good practice of willpower just to complete something that we've started, and if it's not a bad thing, sometimes it's good to have that completion, that feeling of accomplishment. So again, it's tuning in and not necessarily going. The intuition doesn't take us the easy route. That is probably hardly ever the case. but it's the straight and narrow path. It's what's going to get us to where we want to go the quickest. And we can take all sorts of detours, and we can say, okay, well, the intuition told me to take yoga teacher training. I'm taking yoga teacher training, and so this is the right way. And before we know it, maybe we've gone off a little bit too far because we just bored ahead, without continuing to check in with the intuition. Maybe the intuition said yoga teacher training, and we started along that path, going along good, and then the intuition maybe would have said, but wait, there's a certain yoga teacher training that I want you to take, maybe not this particular one, so we have to gauge whether it's our intuition or whether, maybe there's some laziness on our own part. I'm certainly not saying it is for you, but there can be that little dipping point where maybe our energy is a little bit low and we say, oh, do I really have to finish this thing? And if we just raise the energy, maybe it's a completion, and maybe then we take our next step from there, whatever it might be. Okay, so we're getting a little bit low on time, but there's a question from Brenda. How do you not get drawn out of your center? And that's a big question, and it's a continual question. We have to keep, we're never going to be lacking in opportunities to find out what's going to pull us off of our center, because the universe is going to give us exactly what we need. And we can think of it as a blessing when we do get thrown off of our center, then we know that's a button that's pushing my buttons, and that's something I need to work on. When we look at situations, circumstances being neutral, that's a really powerful teaching of Yogananda's. Circumstances are neutral. So if we can get past the egoic reaction of, well, what that person did was the wrong thing, and it didn't have anything to do with me. I did the right thing. I was acting from kindness. But if we're off of our center, then obviously something isn't quite right within us. And so we need to really look inside and do some introspection. It's not that we want to get down on ourselves and say, oh my God, I screwed up again, I'm such an awful person, because that is the ego too. The ego, in its most obvious way, is saying, look at me, I'm so great, I'm so wonderful. It has a superiority complex. We're all familiar with that. But the ego also gives us an inferiority complex. So it's in both directions, that we just really need to forget ourselves and say, however it works for you to transcend the ego, but to really look within whenever we have those experiences of being drawn out, and being thrown off, because we do always, until we're completely free. And we're going to have those opportunities to look within and say, okay, I'm not quite there yet. I've got a little bit more work to do. And, so a good practice that we can do, just saying, we will get thrown off of our center. The more that we meditate, the more that we practice whatever our spiritual practice is, and going within, contacting the divine within us, we won't get thrown off as much. We'll recognize those opportunities and say, okay, I got thrown off a little bit there, and so maybe the next time we won't get thrown out quite so far. We can recognize it and go, okay, just come back in, relax. Circumstances are neutral. It's my reaction that matters. And so, but when we do get thrown off, go inside and say, okay, that happened, and that's okay. So Swami Kriyananda taught this great practice where at night, before we go to bed, he said, build a bonfire at the point between the eyebrows. Visualize that there's a bonfire there, and offer up any situations, any attachments that you have, any feelings of superiority or inferiority, any praise, any blame. Offer it up to this bonfire for purification and say, God is the doer, I'm acting as his instrument or her instrument, and, let it go. In other words, just release it there. If that's a helpful visualization for you, use that every night. I love to practice that before I go to bed, just to go through the day and say, okay, how did I do? And it's not to get wrapped up in it. It's to detach from it and to look at things as an observer and to say, okay, maybe I could have done that better, but I offer it up, and next time I will do better. And so that can be a really helpful practice. Okay, so it's 7 o'clock, and I thank you all so much for your participation and for holding this space with me. And if you have any questions about the Akash series, please do email me. You can email me at info@yoganandainstitute.org. And as I mentioned, it's a wonderful 6-week program that really dives so much deeper than we can do in an hour-long webinar into all these facets of how to draw success and happiness in the truest sense. So if you feel, even if you've taken the Akash series, if you feel drawn to sharing it with others, we also have the Akash teacher training. We have the life therapy program. All of this is at yoganandainstitute.org. These really help us to go deeper in these teachings, and they're universal principles, so it's not anything that you have to let go of. It's just to help us to become more and more integrated in our lives, and to help us take that next step towards making a real positive impact in the world. So thank you all, and God bless you, and namaste. Thank you, and blessings always.